Oseo Freethinkers, I want to apologize for the delay and for not making this a live stream where I discuss this topic many of you have asked me to cover. So to make things right, I chose to produce a few videos on it because I want to cover it in detail and ensure I don't miss any critical information. With that said, let's get right into it. Millions of people are becoming aware of the teachings I have shared and presented on YouTube and other social media platforms. Man, it's amazing to witness how this development is helping us progress positively as a society. This is especially significant considering that we all been misled regarding our history as the indigenous people of America. Some of y'all may still know some folks on YouTube and other places who will still believe that their ancestors were somehow stolen from an undisclosed location in Africa by some big, bad white Europeans who couldn't even afford a boat, let alone know how to build one, especially at that time.
And let me tell you something. This man is unstoppable.
We'll get into that in a second, but let's see why we will first. On January 20th, 2025, Donald Trump, the new president of the US, signed an executive order called Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship.
This next order relates to the definition of birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment of the United States.
Yeah, that's a good one. Birthright. That's a big one.
What about that one in the court? That one is likely to be challenged.
Could be. We think we have good grounds, but you could be right. I mean, you'll find out. It's ridiculous. We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know. And it's just absolutely ridiculous, but we'll see. We think we have very good grounds.
Sir,
people have wanted to do this for decades.
Sir, this is a proclamation declaring a national emergency.
Now, I will read this to you because there's a lot of misinformation about what this is and what it means for particular people. Before I go any further, I will break this down so everyone can understand this portion. It starts off by saying, quote, "By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered, Section 1, Purpose, the privilege of United States citizenship is a priceless and profound gift. The 14th Amendment states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. That provision rightfully repudiated the Supreme Court of the United States' shameful decision in Dred Scott versus Sanford in 1857, which misinterpreted the Constitution as permanently excluding people of African descent from eligibility for United States citizenship solely based on their race. In other words, they are acknowledging that the U.S. Supreme Court purposely misinterpreted the Constitution in 1857 during the Dred Scott case, where they made it seem as if the Constitution permanently excludes people of African descent from becoming or being United States citizens based on their race. See, the text of the 14th Amendment can be misinterpreted in various ways, particularly as highlighted by the Trump administration. While it seems to grant citizenship to everyone, there are significant restrictions. When the amendment was created, it expressly referred to a particular group of people, which is where the discrepancies arise. Can anyone remember which group of people is referenced in the 14th Amendment?
Anyone? 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 Class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone?
There is a prevalent issue with this that I have covered before in my previous videos. I want to revisit it to help you better understand why this is the case. But before I do so, let's continue so you can hear their perspective first. It goes on to state, but the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born in the United States. The 14th Amendment has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were born in the United States but not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Consistent with this understanding, the Congress has further specified through legislation that a person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a national and citizen of the United States at birth, 8 U.S.C. 1401, generally mirroring the 14th Amendment's text. Now, this portion can be confusing for those of you who haven't read the 14th Amendment in its entirety. I addressed this topic in my video titled The Dark Untold Creation Story of Black and White People, which explains why, by law, only individuals classified as white, not based on their skin complexion, classified as white, held citizenship in America from 1790 until 1952, which is well beyond the 14th Amendment's creation date, and no legislation existed to overturn this law in between that time. In that video, I provided government and congressional documentation explaining why this is the case. This also explains why the Trump administration is correct in its perspective of the 14th Amendment. The amendment was never meant to grant birthright citizenship to anyone born in the United States and not subject to its jurisdiction. Only those subject to the United States jurisdiction were deemed citizens of the United States. Tell you what, listen to Donald Trump explain birthright citizenship just a few days ago at the House GOP.
And as we are fighting hard to get birthright citizenship or automatic citizenship for the children of illegal aliens, that's another way, it's automatic citizenship for children of illegal aliens. That's the other term that they use, which is actually more accurate, more understandable. And it's ridiculous. We're the only country that has it, and certainly the only country that has it to that extent. And it wasn't meant, if you look, it was really meant for children of slaves. This is when it happened. The children of slaves, it was not meant for everyone to come into our country by airplane or charging across the borders from all over the world and think they're going to become citizens. It's not meant for that. It wasn't meant for that. And hopefully at some point the courts will understand that without having to go through a whole big deal. This was meant for the children of slaves, and look at the timing of it and you'll see, and I hope judges will understand that. And it has to stop because it's really hurting our country very badly.
See, this is why I constantly explain that this U.S. citizenship or birthright citizenship became an issue over time because it was never meant for anyone who the government would classify as Black, Negro, African American, or people of color, or any foreigner from a different country or state, territory, or continent who has not been forcefully placed under the jurisdiction of the government of the United States. Only a slave can be forcefully placed under the jurisdiction of a government. This is why Trump repeatedly mentioned that the 14th Amendment was for the children of slaves. And mind you, he did not say any particular race of people. Okay? As I proved in my previous videos, slavery was big business, and slaves of America did not have one set skin complexion, no matter what you were misled to believe. Slavery in America was not about suppressing one group of people. Slavery was about suppressing all groups of people by one governing body. This is why you will find that both indigenous Americans and foreigners who migrated to America worked in the fields along with their children, because slavery back then is today's employment.
See, as you can see, the more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
Listen, these U.S. laws have many loopholes, and foreigners, including those who have citizenship right now, use these loopholes to their advantage to play the privilege game. The U.S. government has allowed this since its inception, of course, because it figured out a way to take care of its own people who were migrating from other continents to North America back then. Doesn't this sound all too familiar? Here, Let me refresh your memory.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. Which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
I've said before that this is part of the reason why they eliminated Martin Luther King Jr. He exposed the games being played a long time ago, and this situation continues today. Foreigners still receive various forms of assistance from the U.S. government, even if their status is illegal. This is why many people believe Donald Trump is focused on preventing these deceitful acts from occurring immediately. Now, I think that if this executive order eventually becomes lawful, millions of people who are residing in America right now are in trouble, and not just illegal immigrants. But anyway, let's continue. Among the categories of individuals born in the United States and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the privilege of United States citizenship does not automatically extend to persons born in the United States. 1, when that person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. Or 2, when that person's mother's presence in the United States at the time of said person's birth was lawful but temporary, and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of said person's birth. Now, this means that people like Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, and millions of others fall into the category of individuals who might be excluded from U.S. birthright citizenship. This situation has surprised many who consider themselves Americans, particularly in the light of the actions taken by the Trump administration. This group includes individuals living in the country illegally, such as those falsely identifying as Native Americans, as well as those who inadvertently refer to themselves as undocumented immigrants, including Black and African American individuals. Keep in mind that you are seeing reports of Native Americans being harassed, arrested, and threatened to be deported to Mexico for a couple of reasons. Number 1, the terms African American, Black, and Native American are all politically driven social constructs that the government created under the guise of political correctness. These terms have not been officially recognized in law as a way to classify groups of United States citizens. Because if they were, then U.S. citizenship would have specific labels, distinguishing Africans as Africans, Americans as Americans, and Indians as Indians, among others. Now, this is different from the U.S. Census, which focuses on enumerating the population of America rather than granting citizenship to those counted in the census. Okay? So just because you labeled yourself as Black on the census does not grant you U.S. citizenship automatically. Notice how you still do not have the term Black as your classification of race on your original, not a recent copy, on your original birth certificate. Also, the label Indian was not used before the use of the term people of color by the census. However, the government did use the term Indian throughout multiple legislations dating back to the Continental Congress and the War Department times. I brought this up because it exposes how the term Native American was never legally determined to solely refer to the people known as American Indians. And to that point, the terms Black, African American, and Negro was never legally determined to refer to so-called people of color solely. This leaves these groups vulnerable to infiltration, allowing anyone, especially foreigners, to self-determine which group of people they would like to be associated with through transportation. My wife and I discussed this in detail in the video titled, "Why the First Americans Were Not Native Americans." Millions of these people are immigrants from other continents who are either Siberian or some other Asian European descent. Some of these immigrants have gone through the process of becoming legal U.S. citizens, while some are still illegally here in America. Still, both claim to be Black, African American, or Native American, for example, based on their skin complexions being colored, allowing them to blend in with us, or by way of society's understanding of these politically driven social constructs. Here, look, I'll play a few clips of the video I'm referring to so you could get a gist of what information you could expect to learn more about when you go and watch it. The term Native American was later used by the U.S. Census to refer to a group of people that was originally called Indians by this government, allegedly, which means that there are now separate terms for a group of people that were once all referred to as Indians. Listen closely. According to the 1828 Webster's English Language Dictionary, the term Indian is defined as a general name of any native of the Indies, as in East Indian or West Indian. It is particularly applied to any native of the American continent. And in this same English language dictionary of 1828, it defines the noun American as a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. This means that the copper-colored races, or the Aboriginal Nijis of Turtle Island, who are now being misclassified as Black, are the original inhabitants of America. But since small to large migrations of foreigners from other continents became a viral trend during the early 1800s, the identities of the Niji were replaced by incoming foreigners. And then everyone residing in America was later referred to as Native Americans. But how is it that all of a sudden, a group of people that were not genetically nor historically associated with the term Indian in its entirety are now somehow referred to as Native Americans, as their classification of race by the U.S. Census? The more commonly known explanation of the term native is a person born in any place, whether country, city, or town. So if you are born in one place, no matter if your parents were originally born there or not, you are then called a native, no matter your historic genetic origins. However, the etymology of the word bears a totally different meaning than one may assume. It states that the term native is defined as a person born in bondage, one born a serf or villain. A serf is an agricultural laborer bound under the feudal system to work on his lord's estate. And a villain is a feudal tenant entirely subject to a lord or manor to whom he pays dues and serves in return for land. So, in other words, the general use of the word native referred to individuals who were literally employees, or rather peasants or laborers or servants or slaves to some form of foreign dictatorship, working to pay off their dues in hopes of being granted land in return. Doesn't this sound all too familiar? And why would the term Native American be associated with pale-complexioned foreigners if American history exclusively labels the descendants of so-called black people as the slaves of the slave trade era? You see how they can easily blend in with you, being as though you didn't know that your indigenous bloodline is what they were after, to replace you with them, so that they could control the waterways and then the land of America, of Turtle Island? It is essential to recognize this, as it highlights one of the utilitarian loopholes I mentioned earlier. They fully exploit this situation because they view indigenous Niji of America as the most vulnerable to being affected by stolen identity and paper genocide.
Who are you? You don't know. Don't tell me Negro, that's nothing. What were you before the white man named you a Negro? And where were you? And what did you have? What was yours? What language did you speak then? 20 million black people don't even know their own language. Why? Because he took it away from them. 20 million black people who don't even know the history of their ancestors. Why? Because he took it away from them. And if you try and tell them how thoroughly and completely they've been robbed, he says you're teaching hate. Dark people who have been oppressed and exploited by those who are not their own kind, strangers. So the only way we're going to get some of this oppression and exploitation away from us or aside from us is come together against the common enemy. Aborigines, which means what? Black folks. You never find a white aborigine. Rather, aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine. You want to be called an American. Actually means from the beginning. It's two Latin words. Ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning. Ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning. Ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning. Ab meaning from, origine meaning the beginning.
We, as indigenous Niji, are owed land and money from this foreign government, and we have allowed these strangers to take our place when it was rightfully ours to begin with. It's time to stop crying to our enemies about what they don't do for us and instead depend on each other to do for us.
Woo! Hallelujah!
Oh, I'm not finished. I'm just making sure you can see everything one at a time, just in case. Because there are some people out there who know Native Americans who were born in the U.S. were not covered by the 14th Amendment. A total of 125,000 people became legal citizens by way of the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924. Listen, the term Native American was not mentioned anywhere in this legislation at all, creating a loophole for anyone knowledgeable about this to exploit it, which should make you wonder how illegal immigrants can be treated differently when none of our people invited any of them here in the first place. Wake up, you sleeping giants. I'm just here to make you think.
DNA.
It's Dane Calloway. OCO, freethinkers.